2021 is an important year for HBO's award-winning series Game of Thrones, marking an entire decade since its premiere and a full 25 years since the publishing of its source material. This series shook the world of television to its core, becoming an icon of pop culture in the process. And so, as we celebrate the Iron Anniversary of this series, let's go back to where it all began. Before kings clashed, crows feasted, and dragons danced. We're talking about Season 1 of Game of Thrones. Winter is coming. Today on Script or Screen.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Script or Screen. I am your host, Zach of House Strackman. Sigil, a golden retriever. Our words, I read the book first. And joined with me is my co-host,
Christopher of House Kitchen. The sigil is a tiny whisk. And the words, disturbers.
I like that. That. Welcome, Chris. We're back again for another week of the show.
All right. I want to update everybody. Zach, this week, at the week that we're recording this, we distributed our last episode on this lovely 20th of April. Happy 20th of April to you.
Yes, happy day.
And I can't believe we missed out on. We did it. This was not on purpose. We released the Shaun of the Dead episode without thinking about Edgar Wright's birthday, and it just so happened to be his birthday the day before we released the episode. That was pretty funny.
We pride ourselves on our professionalism and our attention to detail.
It just so happened to be awesome.
How do you know I didn't plan to sandwich this episode between Edgar Wright's birthday and 420?
That is a good. I don't know. You got me there. You'd think I'd know more about the show I co-host with you, but I'm just left in the dark. I make the graphics that I change every so often.
That's okay.
Yeah. But we're talking Game of Thrones. The
Game
show
of fucking Thrones.
Dude, happy Iron Anniversary. My YouTube feed has been filled with the HBO Game of Thrones YouTube channels, like re-release of all the trailers and all the behind the scenes and all that good stuff.
I saw a HBO released a cut, like a trailer, quote unquote, which I don't know what you call it, a trailer, but it's basically just running down all these important moments of Daenerys time in the show. Which as we'll get to in this episode and in our, I suppose, 8 coverings of Game of Thrones eventually that we'll get to, that her trajectory in the series, while maybe not handled in the way people liked, definitely was always the plan, and people
it was on theme.
People bitching about it not being the plan the whole time are diluting themselves. Is that the word?
I don't want to say that they weren't. It's not that they weren't aware of the plan or whatever. It's just they focused on one facet of her, I guess, her career as a prolific. What would you call it? Like a royal diplomat of some sort. She's some political fucking mad queen is what she is. And at the end, you could really see, if you take a closer look at her career, I think the terms fire and blood and no mercy and
Dracarys.
Yeah, they've always been there, burning alive. And
with that said, full spoilers ahead, mainly for season 1 of Game of Thrones, but we might, jump ahead to a later season if it's something worth talking about. But if you have not seen Game of Thrones, what the heck are you doing? Go watch Game of Thrones. People don't seem to like the ending too much. I waffle on it. It's not as bad as people say, and especially at the beginning, though, it's incredible. and we're going to spoil the ever-loving shit out of it. But
yeah, for the most, come on, Zach. We all dream of spring, but at the same time, it's just
I like that.
It's just
I like that.
what it was given. I do have I don't know if this is a synopsis.
Well, before that, because we always forget, plug our social media.
Jesus. I've been podcasting for a number of years. I'll have to admit that. And so I should know. I should know this by now. I try to do a good job.
Just leave a sticky note on your computer, and it's
I used to leave sticky notes on all the time, but then it just kind of got out of hand that I had just so many. I'm like, I'm running out of screen real estate here, because before I would just keep them on like the little borders and the stuff like around, the monitor and everything. And then I'm like, I got to get back to some of these, or I got to just stop doing this in general because it's. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Script or Screen. That's Zach Strackman. I'm Chris Kitchen. As always, you can find us at Script or Screen on all of our favorite social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can reach out to us on any of these platforms. Let us know what you want to hear. Ask us a question, maybe get a response, and interact with us in any other way. You can visit our website, www.scriptorscreen.com or anchor.fm/scriptorscreen. There you could find all the past episodes of Script or Screen and all your favorite platforms where you can listen to it. We're on everything. We're on Google. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're on Anchor, of course. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Amazon Music.
You say Spotify?
I did say Spotify. We are literally everywhere. We are in your homes, in your roofs.
You have no excuse unless
really
you just don't like us.
You know what I did out of the most with the most self-indulgent what would you like motivation ever is I went up to my my little device that I have on in my living room. I said, "Hey, play Script or Screen," and you know what? She did, and it was awesome. And I'm like, "That's pretty cool." And you guys can do that too. You could do that with any of your favorite musics or
your Google
podcasts.
Home.
Or your Google Home. Actually, I haven't tried it with Google Home yet. I should go over to my parents' place and just do it anyway.
Mom, let me in. I gotta try something.
I don't know about you. I actually have a key to my parents' house.
I do, actually. I have a key to my parents' house. I don't have a key to your parents' house. Or do I? Anyway, that is our social medias. Hit him with that synopsis.
Okay, so I guess it's kind of the synopsis for the whole series. It's really 9 noble families fight for control over the lands of Westeros, while an ancient enemy returns after being dormant for millennia.
Hold on, 9? Starks, Lannisters, Baratheon, Greyjoy, Targaryen, Tyrell,
the Dornish people.
Okay, the Martells. That's 7.
I don't know, the Boltons.
The Boltons, I guess, and then Clegane?
I wouldn't consider Clegane. There's just 2 of them.
Okay, well...
This synopsis comes to us from IMDb. I had another one.
Maybe
it's also
Baelish?
Get in the game. Aaron, maybe? I don't know.
Aaron, maybe the Dothraki.
Here's kind of a review of the first season. It's like, get in the game. Experience the first season of this visionary HBO series set in the mythical world whose inhabitants vie for control of the Iron Throne. But in a land where seasons can last a lifetime, winter is coming, and an ancient evil has awakened.
Yeah, I mean, we won't get to it for seasons, but
there's bits and pieces.
There is. That's what I like about this. Let's go through the nitty gritty, and then we'll talk turkey. So, man, Game of Thrones original run was from April 17th, 2011 to June 19th, 2011. So, just about 10 years ago.
That's insane. I didn't get into Game of Thrones. I want to kind of put that out there right now.
What was your jumping off point?
I think season 7 was the first season I watched that aired on television.
Wow.
I got into the show just as season 6 ended.
Was it me? Did I get you and Anissa into it?
Well, Anissa had been into it. Anissa is my lovely partner in life. For those who are asking, I think I mentioned her a couple times in the show. But no, she had gotten me to watch the show, at least the very first episode. I've watched it about 4 times, or like 5 times before I actually got into the show, just because for some reason I just couldn't get into it. I don't know what it was. It was just I was not vibing with it. And I got to say, rewatching the show right now that we were doing before recording this, it was the one episode I think I skipped just because I'm like, I can't do that to myself again and watch the first episode. I'm going to watch every other episode in the first season because I know I enjoyed it all way more than the first one. And I don't know if you knew this, but the pilot was filmed like 2 different times.
Yep, they have an unaired pilot that had a different actress for Daenerys. And I don't remember who it was.
Oh.
Let's see. Unaired.
But it was shot in like 2008 or 2009 or something like that.
Yeah.
Are you Googling? You sound like you're Googling.
Yes, I am.
This just in. Zachary's coming at us with the news.
Tamsin Merchant.
I wonder if she's related to Stephen Merchant.
We're finding out today on Scripter's Screen. It doesn't say.
Oh. Well, doesn't matter.
But that's cool. I mean, you got into the show kind of late. I did. But
it was always being watched in my household. In fact, the first episode I ever watched was The Red Wedding.
Okay.
Or I guess it's the title of the episode is The Reigns of Castamere.
Yes.
And that was like, okay, that's what this show is. And after that, I didn't watch it for a number of years.
So speaking of The Red Wedding, I'm sure you saw, and all of our listeners are well aware of this, but when that event happened, it was kind of a large cultural moment in the world of television, in the world of pop culture. And there was a popular video that went around of people losing their shit at what happens. And that was my jumping off point, because I knew what Game of Thrones was, and I remember seeing like the first thing I think I ever saw where I was like, oh, that's something from Game of Thrones was a picture of Daenerys from the season 3 premiere, where she's holding the ball that's thrown by the little boy that has the manticore in it. It was
a little girl,
whatever, in Astapor. Please, you gonna talk to me about my Song of Ice and Fire knowledge, but
oh God.
but yeah, so I didn't really pay too much mind to it until the Red Wedding stuff started happening, and then I said, well, this seems to be a very popular thing, and I am at least a little intrigued, and so I did some research. I'm like, oh, it's based off a book series, so I'm one of those people. I like to read the book before I dive into the movie or the show that it's based off of, or at least I try to. And so I read A Game of Thrones, and then I watched season 1, and then I read A Clash of Kings, read Clash of Kings, saw season 2, was very surprised by the ending of season 2, because that is not in the book, at least as far as I remember, and then read Storm of Swords, and then watched season 3, so I was ready for season 4 when it aired on television.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's my history for it. And then, of course, I read Feast for Crows, Dance of the Dragons. I love the series. It's wonderful. George R.R. Martin is an absolutely amazing writer.
I read something the other day that says that he's considered the American Tolkien. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. Tolkien, he very much was, he was writing to create basically a new mythology for England, whereas Martin, he wanted to make a fantasy story that moved away from a lot of the tropes of fantasy stories and examined things that other fantasy stories didn't. The one thing you hear...
Would you say it was kind of like a deconstruction?
It definitely is, and I think like the one thing if he was in an interview, it's a pretty famous quote by him, but he talks about how, he read Lord of the Rings and Aragorn, spoiler, becomes the king at the end, and he always wanted to know, well, what happens after that? What happens after the coronation? What was Aragorn's like tax policy? What was what was the governance like? You know, and so
him and George Lucas should have a conversation.
But yeah, so the series, obviously, Game of Thrones, it is based off the name comes from the first book. The book series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. That series is in large part based off the War of the Roses and other kind of cherry-picked historical events that all went into the making of it. And like, you can just, I will listen to interviews with him just to hear where he gets his ideas for things, because I'm a writer too. I like to draw my inspiration from where I can. And I think for a time I was trying to, it might have been like right after I finished Dance with Dragons, where I was writing, I'm accidentally writing too much like him, and I kind of had to
stop yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, once you get attached to like kind of not like an idol, but like one of these really inspirational figures, it is kind of hard to break out away from that. Like, I gotta remember, I gotta do it my own. Like,
right, exactly.
Can't just be a carbon copy.
Exactly. But back to the show. Showrunners for the entire 8-season run are a couple of names that have a lot of a bit of controversy with these names.
Well, at the moment they do.
Yeah, at the time, at the beginning of the series, and I would say for about 7 seasons, they were fine. And maybe literally up until the middle of the final season, they were probably okay. And then people suddenly stopped liking them. But, so, this is David Benioff. Excuse me, I just hit puberty. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who acted also as some of the main writers for the series. But yeah, we'll get into them later, because I think people only, when talking about them, they only focus on like maybe the last 4 or 5 episodes of the series.
Yeah, and not like the entire setup and everything they've done to make sure that everything in the end would all
right
make as much sense as possible.
Here's the lesson you'll get from Papa Zach today on this episode of Script or Screen.
Tell me, Papa Zach.
People all across the world, no matter what you do, no matter what good you do, people will only dwell on the negatives. So make your positives count.
You know what Papa Chris's advice for the show is? Sit down, shut up, and just fucking enjoy the show, damn it.
That being
said,
so
much to enjoy about it.
There's nothing wrong with criticism. And like, even like in season 1, there's stuff that I'm not like thrilled about. And
don't make fucking petitions that are like, oh, remake the 8th season. Are you ridiculous? Do you have any sense or know
I think that is like
how
one of
television
the most,
works?
That's one of the most, when I saw that petition, I was like, that's one of the most disrespectful things I have ever seen, because the amount of work, they filmed for the final battle of the series, or the final like battle against the White Walkers. We were getting way off track, but they filmed it for like 55 weeks, almost all at night, and people are like, oh, just redo it, just fucking redo it. But we're getting,
dare you?
We're getting off base.
Let's get. All right, so we also have directors Tim Van Patten, Brian Kirk, Daniel Minahan, and Alan Taylor. And additionally, we had in music the incredible theme and other beautiful scores. Ramin
Djawadi. Oh my God, this guy.
Dude,
listen,
I don't know about you, but the Game of Thrones theme is iconic.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing, and I want to talk about it as we get into it. But can I just say, Ramin Djawadi, I listened to a few interviews with him, and he talks about how they tasked him with making themes and motifs for each house.
Yeah.
And it had to all be so fluid, where you could have a triumphant version and a sad version and a strong version and a light version, and every piece of music had to be flexible like that. But I think maybe his best contribution is the song The Reigns of Castamere, which it doesn't even become a main factor in the story until season 3 and the very end of season 3. But
I mean, well, actually, we get the hints and everything in season 2, but then season 3, it's like it's
we
the de facto.
In the episode of the first season, which I believe it was, is it The Wolf and the Lion? No, You Win, You Die. You Win or You Die. One of them, it's when Tyrion and Bronn are walking through the Vale, and Tyrion is whistling Reigns of Castamere. He whistles it a lot in the series. And it's cool that's like, even going back to season 1, they were seeding these things, and I think, that song, it carries a lot of weight for the story, and Ramin Djawadi just man, he knocked it out of the park.
You know what's funny, Zach, is that you told me before we were like recording the podcast in the middle of our notes, and I want to repeat it here, is that like, George Martin refers to himself as a gardener. Yes. Rather than like he had everything there, but he's just planting his stuff and watering his plants as he goes on. And you know what? I feel like they brought that into the show. Everybody did, and the music is just an extension of that.
Absolutely,
and the respect that's reflected from his material.
And if George wants to take literally more than 10 years to write one fucking book, I mean, George.
Go figures.
Yeah, I mean, like, what the hell, man? I think he said actually that the pandemic has like helped his writing a lot because he can't get away from it.
I haven't read these books, but I definitely see him. I think he just got like a 6-figure deal with one of these companies to executive produce something else. I think that was in the news recently. I forget what it was. But before we leave the music one more time, our lovely composer is actually also composing the score for the Eternals coming later this year.
Dude, I just saw another picture.
Westworld as well.
Yeah, I just saw another picture of Kumail Nanjiani, like from like a couple of days ago, and it's like, that dude is so insanely jacked for that movie.
I mean, we also get fellow Game of Thrones alumni Kit Harington, as well as Richard Madden.
Are they both in the movie?
They are. I didn't realize Kit Harington was in the movie, but he is. He's in Eternals.
Wow.
He wasn't in the lineup when they did it at Hall H a couple years ago.
He wasn't. This probably because he's the bad guy.
Oh no! Well, I mean, his character's announced, but like, I don't know if he's a bad guy or good guy. It'll be if they have on screen time together. That would be cool, though.
That'd be cool.
Anyways, so, dude, the budget of this show is like, I guess this is in 2010 dollars.
Yes.
$5 to $10 million just for the pilot alone, and I guess part of that is reshoots as well.
Right.
And then you also have the rest of the season. It's just pretty much $50 to $60 million total, averaging about $15 million an episode. This is a crazy expensive show. I mean, we talk about movies on this podcast that are like $1-2 million in budget, and then
I think to have some of these elements in the show, like a giant ice wall or dire wolves that are huge and much bigger than regular wolves, or giant castles, and of course by the end, dragons.
I mean, also you got to think about it like this as well, because HBO has always been like a paid for subscription service or whatever you want to call it. Like even if it was just cable or streaming, it's original. The Winter's Coming, the very first episode in itself had 2.22 million views in its original air day.
Yeah.
So 2.22 million times, what is it, $15 subscription? That's like $330 million.
Chris, we do this arithmetic every episode now of how much is the subscription versus how many people are subscribed versus who's watching and what did this cost. And every time we're like, oh yeah, no, that checks out.
No, but it's just, I mean, they made the budget back for the at least half the season with just the first episode. It's not television, Zach. It's HBO. Damn it. Yeah. They know what they're doing. I'm impressed. I want to get into our notes. Now that we've got to the nitty-gritty, we can't go through all the houses.
No, we're going to go through all of them because all of these people deserve recognition. Don't worry, I'll go fast. Organized by house, right? Because there's just so many fucking people in this show. We have House Stark, the good guys. We have Sean Bean as Eddard Ned Stark, the lead of the show. Nothing bad ever happens to him. We have Michelle.
Also, I don't appreciate your tone. The good guys, depending on your point of view. In my point of view, the Jedi are evil. And God. I would say some of the Starks, sometimes their intentions are questioned at some points.
Questioned, but not questionable. Anyway, Michelle Fairley as Catelyn Stark, formerly Catelyn Tully, the matriarch of the family. Richard Madden as Robb Stark, Ned and Kat's firstborn and
heir to the Madden fortune and the Madden NFL games.
I don't know if that's true. Sophie Turner as Sansa Stark, the older daughter. Maisie Williams as Arya Stark, both who have gone on to.
I was going to say both of X-Men.
Yes,
fame.
Yeah, I was going to say they've both gone on to be X-Men. Isaac Hempstead Wright as Brandon Bran Stark, who he has a very interesting trajectory in the series, and one Kit Harington, descendant of William Shakespeare himself, Jon Snow.
Is he actually a descendant of William Shakespeare?
I believe, yeah, I read that somewhere.
I thought he was a descendant of the guy in the Gunpowder series that he did, which is, I'm pretty sure, just Guy Fawkes. I could also be wrong about that.
Whatever. I could be absolutely wrong, so I'm just going to say...
We are wrong on a lot of our episodes.
He's the descendant of Ozzy the Iceman. All right. House Lannister. Peter Dinklage as Tyrion Lannister, who he won the Emmy for this role because he killed it. He's amazing.
Like how many times?
I don't know how.
A couple of times.
Couple of times, but first for this first season. Nikolai Coster-Waldau as Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer.
Mm-hmm.
Lena Headey as Cersei Lannister, and Charles Dance as Tywin Lannister. Both
fucking king himself, Charles Dance.
What an awesome actor. And Lena Headey, she's good in everything she does. She is an awesome actress. I like her in this. I like her in
when she
Dread
nodded her
3D.
Head in affirmation to Leonidas in 300 to kick the guy into the pit. That was awesome.
Yeah. And then she stabbed a guy, and his coin spilled out. But everything that Lena Headey does, she's awesome in. Moving on, we got House Baratheon. That's the Crown Stag. We have Mark Addy as one of the best characters in this season, Robert Baratheon. He is one of those treats we get this season that you don't get in any other season. He is awesome. We have Gethin Anthony as his little brother Renly Baratheon, who's he's alive in this season, and that's what matters.
That's true. I want to go back to Tyrion for a second. I just want to let you know he's won for playing Tyrion 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
Emmys?
Yeah, he's won 4 Emmys for playing Tyrion for outstanding supporting actor. That was season 1. I think this is season 5, or no, season 1, season 5, 7, and 8.
Hell yeah, dude!
Yeah,
what a champ. He's awesome.
Yeah.
So Jack Gleason as Joffrey Baratheon. Strap in for this kid.
Yeah, I liked him a lot more in Batman.
No, but he is a fantastic actor, and he actually retired from acting once he exited the show. So in case anyone's
doing well,
yeah, I'm sure he is. I mean, he's got that Game of Thrones money to live off of.
I mean, I really hope he does, and that people don't go look at him in the street and be like, I hate you! I fucking hate you! Because that would be really sad.
You never know. And then we have House Targaryen, small house, only a couple of them left. There is Emilia Clarke as Daenerys Targaryen, mother of dragons and possible crazy person. and Harry Lloyd as her totally stable and not at all abusive brother, Viserys Targaryen.
He's the definitively crazy person.
No, he is cracked like an egg.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of other cast, too many to really go too much, but I mean, some highlights are Aidan Gillen as Peter Littlefinger Baelish, Conleth Hill as Varys the Spider, Ian Glenn as Jorah Mormont, Alfie Allen as Theon Greyjoy, Rory McCann as Sandor the Hound Clegane, and again, one of those amazing things you get in season 1 and then you don't really get anywhere else except for one scene in season 2, Jason fucking Momoa as Khal Drogo.
Yeah.
Which I still say to this day is his best acting accomplishment.
Really? You think this is it? And not like, I don't know. Have you watched Frontier?
The fact that he is acting so lively and so well while reciting fluently a fake language is fucking impressive.
You just like that he's not saying "my man."
That's true.
And you don't know how he's going to be in Dune. Remember?
I am definitely excited to see him in Dune. So we'll see. But for now, Khal Drogo he gets a seal of approval from me.
Yeah.
So I guess that's really. I mean, we could spend an entire episode's worth of time just covering the actors in the show, but let's dig into the the grit, and talk about what makes this thing tick.
I think I don't know about you, but I feel like the starting point of this entire show, really, the grandeur of it all. Like this is a fantasy series, dude. I don't know about you, but there's not, in my opinion, there are very few well-executed fantasy series available to watch right now.
I agree.
One of the best ones probably being Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. But I hold this one, I mean, as close as possible to that adaptation. I can't think of anything else that really matches it with the same. I mean, just with all the performances and especially the biggest point is probably the writing. And I know that gets a lot of flack, but like
not in season 1, it doesn't.
No, well, right, not in season 1. But when people remember the show, they think of their weird expectations that they had.
Right.
You know, and I go back and watch this stuff, and I'm really like, dude, like every piece of dialogue, and I don't know how much is taken. I didn't read the books. I don't know how much is taken directly from the source material and how much is just written the way they did it and all, but they just have the best, I don't know, casting and everything to go with some of the lines that are here.
It's wonderful. It is very faithful to the book. I would say it's probably arguably the most faithful out of any season. Especially...
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, especially as you get into the later series and they kind of change the structure from the books a bit. But go ahead with what you were going to say.
You know, it's funny. I kind of jumped into the writing, and I also want to talk about, like, you know, the idea of fantasy is also the idea of world building, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the first thing we get when you turn this show on is that amazing intro. You know, when you open the first page of the book or the first 2 pages, you get the map of currently where the story resides in Westeros. And that's followed up with exactly where we're presiding in the show. Like, you have, like, the map of King's Landing, then you go to, I think it's just Winterfell and then the Wall and just some of these different locations. And it's done in a very fun way. Then you get to go to Essos as well, like,
to Pentos or Vias Dothrak.
Exactly. And it's just really entertaining.
I'd like to kind of back up a bit because what's great about the opening is it serves a purpose. And I think a lot of this first season, it serves a very important purpose because you have people like me who not only read the books, but are pretty familiar with fantasy tropes and fantasy ideas. And then you have people like you who might be familiar with fantasy tropes and ideas, but you haven't read the books. And then you might have a third category of people who neither read the books nor are familiar with fantasy tropes and ideas.
Yeah.
So this show had a big hill to climb, because this is not like this. You compared it to Lord of the Rings, and I think that's an apt comparison, because Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones both take place in their own world. They have no connection to the outside world, except for one line where the writers fucked up in season 3, and someone mentions French stitching on a sleeve. And there's no.
Oh, really? I don't even remember that.
It's when Loras Tyrell is talking with Sansa Stark by a fountain, and he lets his gay out a little bit, and he starts talking about French stitching on a sleeve, and you're like, well, there's no France in Game of Thrones world, but whatever. But yeah, so they all take place in their own world, and they all have their own rules. And so this show had a massive uphill battle, because it's not like Harry Potter where you have, it's our world, but there's a magic side of it. And it's not like, say, Narnia, where it's a magical world, but you have people from our world going into it.
I gotta say, actually, Harry Potter and Narnia, I would say, are actually a lot closer together than versus these two. But also good in their own right, so to speak. But yeah, no, I agree.
But so like just kind of going through the all the things that this show had to establish to an audience, and I guess I would say having to expect that probably half, if not more, of the people watching wouldn't have any idea of what they were getting into. So they had to establish, not in any specific order, but Westeros and Essos, the concept of, year or multiple year-long seasons, the idea of noble houses and the hierarchy of the Seven Kingdoms, the political relations between all the houses, an entire backstory regarding the rebellion, entire cultures and languages that they would, have made up. And then, like, all the fantasy shit. And I'm talking about, like, the others, the whites, weirwood trees, the wall, green sight, the old gods and the faith of the seven, blood magic and dragons, all of that.
They didn't have blood magic in the first episode, though, or even the first season, really, I don't think.
First episode, no. First season, yes, with Mirri Maz Duur.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That is blood magic.
So,
I have a little bit of criticism about, the fact that they did pack all this shit in, I would say, for the most part, into the first episode. I mean, let alone the first season, but, like, I think that was my biggest issue with the first episode, is that there was just a lot of information being hammered into me. And at the same time, I feel like it took me a few times to get through it, because I'm like, I have to learn all this in one episode? Jesus, this is a lot to decompress.
I have always said that this show has one of the hardest barriers to entry, because it is kind of an info dump right from the beginning. But the fact that they do convey so much information in that first episode, I think, is a testament to how well it's written. But obviously, we wouldn't be talking about this show if they failed to establish all those things and make a compelling drama,
I was going to say, yeah, they really did, especially, like, the fact that it was written and really produced for a very specific audience, which I think caters to the network it aired on. It had the inclusion of, like, really good, I mean, for the most part, good effects, sex. I was going to say.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, I
really
like the opening slaps, the acting was, like, extremely good, and, like, like you said,
it's just a very adult themed and everything. Like, from the get-go, I don't think they were trying to necessarily include all ages, but more of, like, and not even a teen kind of, what would you call that? Free-form story,
young
or whatever. Young adult. Like, this was very much directed for a more mature audience.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how the books are written, or, like, what audience they're meant for.
They're written for mature audience. There is let's just say that George Martin, he has very descriptive words.
Right, but I feel like, you look at like Tolkien and stuff like that, like the age group for that is, I would say, kind of in the teens, right? Like if you look at the original Hobbit.
The original Hobbit's a children's book, and then
okay, there you go.
And then The Lord of the Rings, I mean, he wrote that, like 15, 20 years later, and that, yeah, it's definitely a much more mature story. I read Lord of the Rings in elementary school, so,
I've tried to read The Hobbit several times, and there's something about fantasy books that it's the hardest thing for me.
Do you want my copy with illustrations?
No, that's your special copy, Zach. I would never take that from you.
Oh my god! But
at the same time, this show, like, I mean, it gave us all this information, and it in such a way that it's just like, okay, they're trying to really like attract people with like, all this we just said,
heavy drama, some real visceral action, excellent special effects, and that all
compelling
important
dialogue.
I was going to say that all important TNA.
Yeah, there you go.
But you know what I really love about this first season? Again, it's a thing about this first season that you don't get again after a Game of Thrones is it's a murder mystery. It is almost like a whodunit in the scope of a giant fantasy world / kingdom, where our hero, Ned, he finds out that the previous Hand of the King, Jon Arryn, has been killed, and we have some clues, and he decides to go be the new Hand of the King, but use that as an opportunity to investigate what happened. And the scheming and the search for clues and the following of leads, that he finds out that about the bastards of Robert Baratheon, and he finds out of Jon Arryn's last words, and
this relationship, a hidden relationship between Cersei and Jaime,
and why that would be worth covering up. And it's really cool because you get to see this guy who's, he's investigating. He's almost like a detective, and he gets in over his head with a bunch of people and a bunch of powerful families that are all wrapped up in this conspiracy. And it's almost like you're reading or watching a detective story. Which, again, as the series goes on, it leans heavily, much more heavily into fantasy. But for this first one, that's just, I think, one of the things I really like about it.
No, it's I want to say it's like a really great quality for it to be multifaceted, in that sense. And I mean, in the end, actually, like, yeah, sure, some of it's pure fantasy, but you can look at like other aspects. I guess they all kind of live within fantasy. I'll give you that this first season is a little more like it's funny that you say it's a lot harder for new people to come into, but I guess for people that are not fantasy fans coming into a show like this would be a great season to kind of introduce and maybe prep them before they get into it, because there's other things they could enjoy.
Right. At the beginning of the series, dragons have been dead for like centuries, and
they said about like 300 to 500 years or something like that.
Well, technically, I'm not gonna get into it, but like the dragons, Aegon came over 300 years before the beginning of the series, so it's maybe been like 100 few years. So I have the book, the Fire and Blood, that is all about all the Targaryens, but it's a long read, and I'm not going to get into all that right now. But this is a world that magic has kind of faded from. The idea of White Walkers, people laugh at the idea. It seems crazy. And the dragon eggs that Daenerys is given, people, Illyrio Mopatis believes that they are just like stones. They're fossils. But hey,
Yeah.
they're cool fossils, so
Take them.
happy
They represent
wedding.
your house exactly.
And I think as the series goes on, with the birth of Daenerys' dragons, we see magic kind of breathed back into the world, and that's when things like the Lord of Light, Red God, and other facets of magic in the world start becoming more and more commonplace, to the point
I mean,
that
especially like the people of what is it, the Wizards of Karth said that the only reason why their magic came back was because of the birth of dragons.
yeah, and I mean, like, I always loved, like, watching the show as it went on and being like, man, compare season 1 to, like, even, like, season 4 when you have the battle at the wall and there's, like, mammoths and giants and stuff. Like, that shit's so fucking rad by the time you get to it, but I feel like it feels so earned because this first season was so, like, light on the fantasy tropes.
Yeah.
And like you said, that the opening, it's great. It's wonderful for newcomers because
You just get the lay of the land,
you get the lay of the
and it
land.
really like, and it changes. It does change per episode once you get further into the show. Like,
yeah, we see
it'll
the
give you our new
Eyrie,
locations and everything.
we see the twins, we see Karth. Well, that's season 2.
Harrenhal.
Right, and what's cool is if you're maybe like a new time viewer, someone who's just getting into the show, and you see that, and it's a good way to get the lay of the land. But as you watch it, and maybe upon multiple viewings, and when you've kind of taught yourself to look for these things, there's little things that I just love, like how every cast member has their character's house sigil by their name. So, like, if it says Kit Harington, it'll have a wolf. If it says Lena Headey, it'll have a lion.
Oh my god, I don't think I've ever noticed that.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yep.
So I wonder if it changed for like Alfie Allen as Theon.
Well, he was always a Greyjoy, so
Yeah, but then like he was started out like for the Starks, but like
Yeah, he
okay,
was
so it
still
doesn't matter like their allegiances.
right.
Like, would Jon have a wolf even though he was never like given the Stark last name or something? Like,
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he would, because
It would have been cooler if they would have changed it up a little bit, but all right. I'm not gonna,
I just, yeah, man, the opening's so great. I love listening to it. It's such it always has this sense of like almost like an impending, like there's something coming and something ominous in the air as you're watching these places and stuff. And I always just kind of like the feeling I get when I'm listening to that song of like it's building to something very, very ominous or dangerous.
Yeah.
Kind of like the show.
Well, there were a lot of ominous and dangerous moments in this show. Like, when we attribute things to certain writings and certain just situations that we find ourselves in, I got to say, it's really hard to kind of pick and choose which moments are worth talking about, because it almost feels like
too many.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that I've kind of put on the side that I feel like mean a lot in terms of like characters and the arcs and just the situations where we find ourselves. But I mean, that's why I don't know. I don't understand when people talk about the writing of the show. I just think about some of the most wonderful scenes. Like, you look at Ned Stark's character,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I mean, you're right. Like, the first season has I can't really see any issue at all, to be honest. Like, Ned Stark's character, right? This honorable man, like that is the theme of the first season, is fucking honor, right?
Yeah,
Or
basically.
like if you want to talk about like just like, but it's also like his flaw, like
he is honorable to a fault,
he is an honorable fool, as I think Cersei calls him,
and thoroughly not cut out for this world. Like Ned Stark, it is a miracle he lived as long as he did, because this is not a man built for the Game of Thrones world.
No, not in the least. Good thing Sean Bean died in whatchamacallit, Lord of the Rings so that he may live in Game of Thrones to just ultimately die again. I wonder what's the next fantasy series we'll see him in it.
You never know. But yeah, man, the writing is so good in this series. And listen, it is no secret that when, like, okay, there's 5 books that have been written, and about, midway through season 5, going into season 6, they ran out of source material. And I would say the overall quality of the writing did begin to drop. I don't think it was ever as massive a plummet as people think it is. And like I always say, Game of Thrones on its worst episode is still better than so much stuff. I'm not saying that the writing in the by the final handful of episodes is not flawed, because it is, and I think part of that came from them shortening it to 6 episodes, and if they had maybe more episodes, they could have fleshed everything out, given stuff time to breathe, and it would have been better. But looking back on this first season, when people tell me David Benioff and D.B. Weiss are terrible writers, I'm like, no, they're fantastic writers. Like, there's series, like television series original writing here that is absolutely stunning.
Do you have specific moments you want to talk about?
I think we had a few that kind of overlap, but I know like the first one I mean, listen, I'm starting with a scene in episode 5, The Lion and the Wolf, but that's not to say the first 4 episodes don't have great dialogue. It's all great dialogue. But I love
you gotta love. I mean, all right. I'll if you want me, I have one that's a little earlier.
Sure. Yes, please.
It's just kind of like a quick reveal, like regarding the character of like our heroes, right? Mm-hmm. So it's in I think it's in the second episode. What is that? The King's Road. Mm-hmm. Where you have Jon and Ned, they're parting ways to see each other, and Jon being the bastard son of the Starks, never mm-hmm. really accepted because of Catelyn not wanting to really love him, which gets another great character moment later in a couple seasons.
Yep.
And you have Jon really curious about like just his mother, and what does he know about?
Does my mother
everything.
Know about me? Does she know I'm alive? Does she care?
And they have like the little, I wouldn't call it a heart to heart, but it's the last time they'll see each other. And then come a couple minutes later in the episode, you have Robert and Ned discussing their like, what if we just ran away and we just hunted, you and I, a couple of swords
on our sides, couple of tavern wenches to warm our beds. Yeah, I love that scene. If you can tell, I love this series. I can quote it day and night.
I really couldn't.
But yeah, the writings. The one joke I saw, the one meme that I saw among the many by the end of the series that I absolutely love is Robert Baratheon because he mentions it about his own strength, but they've appropriated a line to talking about like the writing in season 1 being like, God's the writing was strong then. but
it's just like a great moment that shows, he's telling, he asked Ned about like, oh, what about your bastard's mom? Like, what about her? And then he kind of reveals some information, though it's not all that it seems in that moment as revealed later on. Like, dude, you have this great conversation between Ned, who's this established hero of Robert's rebellion, and like was almost the second in command to his closest confidant, and then he kind of stoops to a moment of like very little in terms of his honor, right? He betrayed his to be wife and that commitment he's already made, and comes home with a bastard son. Like, mm-hmm. Oh shit! Like, this guy's more complicated. It's almost like he's a little more black and white. Though it becomes far more colorful than anything else in a few seasons. And it's the example that I want to bring up in terms of some of the gardening that mm-hmm. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss had provided to us. I mean, this early on, and it just goes to show like there's a lot of good bits. I have a couple more, but I know I think one you have comes next in some of the order.
Yeah, I mean, so like episode 5, the Lion and the Wolf, it has, I think, two very strong scenes. The first one, to me, and again, I'm not saying that other episodes before this don't have noteworthy scenes, but like when you have the first Littlefinger and Varys scene, like bantering between each other, right in front of the Iron Throne, and they're just these two schemers, and the way that they dance around each other with their verbal punches is so, like, keeping up with the conversation is such a treat, talking about like, oh, when's the last time I believe I saw you before, since the last time you saw me, and Littlefinger says, saw me with your own eyes, and Varys says, eyes that I own. And it's just...
Can I tell you something? The supporting characters in this show are impeccable. They are sometimes better than some of the main characters, I'll say that. like Varys...
Can't argue with that.
Varys himself is really, like... he might be the most honest fucking character in the entire series. Like, like, true to form. Like, he has, like, the most through and through character motivations.
To some people, he is incredibly dishonest, but, like, I think...
No, but to himself, he does not, like, he's great. That the moment where him and Ned are in the dungeons, he brings Ned water.
Mm-hmm, it's kind of informing...
Yeah, in the black cells, and Ned's like, what the hell? He's, like, who are you really loyal to? He's like, the realm. Someone must be. It's like, dude, like, Varys is like the fucking... And he's going, obviously, against the Lannisters and finding out shit about Daenerys in the fucking dungeons of...
Oh, when he's talking with Illyrio Mopatis, yeah.
Yeah.
And like, that is a scene directly out of the books, and you can even tell when you're listening to it, that's George's dialogue, because it's so on point with how his writing is.
How do you feel about some of the adapted bits, or like the changes that they made?
You know what? I feel like changes they made in season 1, there's not many. It's pretty, I'll get to one change I fundamentally just don't understand, but that's like when we get into something beyond the writing. But I think for overall, like, the adaptation of this for season was, for basically the whole series, is done extremely well. I think another standout scene that we both really love is in episode 5 is Robert and Cersei's heart-to-heart.
Yes,
this is a 6-minute scene of just nonstop dialogue, and it's entirely show original. It's entirely Benioff and Weiss.
You see, I didn't know that until you told me, because there's and I would say it's split in kind of two parts. There's two conversations that are had in this.
Yeah, like the war tactics, and then there's their relationship.
Yeah. Exactly, and at the same time, he has that great line. It's like, it's a funny trick you do. You open your mouth and your father's words come out, and it's like, and I love this too, because there's a lot of allusion to the show in this first season, and a lot of establishment just in pure dialogue about either characters or just things that'll come upon Game of Thrones later. The whole gardening and planting the seeds thing again, and that's the thing. Like, we've yet to meet the great Warden of the West, Tywin Lannister himself, until, I think an episode or two after the fact. Along lines, like Stannis Baratheon, and like just kind of like these weird relationships that we're finding out, just in all this weird dialogue pieces. It's not just like the very first episode where everybody was together and lined up and we saw who was related to who. It's like the Mormonts kind of have the same deal going on in this season, right? Like, we get Jorah and Jorah's kind of two like different sides of the not the same coin, but like the same house. We hear what happened to Jorah from all the way in Essos, and Jorah kind of speak about it himself and to Jon a little bit. It's just God, it's great stuff. But
I just hearing Robert talk. Robert he's a drunk and he's kind of an oaf, but he isn't an idiot. And I really love this scene because hearing him talk tactics of war is so great, because you're like, yeah, this guy might be kind of a king, but he knows what he's talking about. When he talks, listen, you get to season 7, you get to the spoils of war, the episode Spoils of War, and suddenly Mark Addy's voice just screams inside my head. Just, only a fool would meet the Dothraki in an open field, and you see it play out exactly like he says it would. And
I'd also like to say he gives us also a lot more to his character in just this one, in both parts, than what we thought before, right? Like you said, he's a drunk, he's kind of an ass, and not very faithful in his own marriage and everything.
No,
and you really get
even a little bit.
You get, I want to say, probably the most honest performance and dialogue that it's almost truly believable between him and his wife, where they say that hatred has fueled their relationship for their marriage for 17 years at this point. And it's like, dude, and it's crazy that even after all that time, in the middle of these moments, they had what is probably the the most open conversation, the most believable on both ends.
I love 2 lines out of it, especially. It's, he says, talking about Lyanna Stark, and he says, she was taken from me, and 7 kingdoms couldn't fill the hole she left behind. And when he's, says that to Cersei, and he says, does that upset you, or does that make you feel bad? And she just says, it doesn't make me feel anything. There maybe once was
and she
a
says
passion
it too.
there, and it's just gone cold. And it's very sad, but they're being so honest with each other.
Yeah, it's the fact that, honestly, I would also like to say Cersei has really tough skin at this point. She's kind of one of the most hated characters on the show.
I think she's one of the most...
Well, I say most hated as in just the character herself, the performance and the act, and everything was perfect. And the fact that she is so hated means she did her fucking job the exact same way.
The further you get into the series, you really get to understand Cersei, and I'm not to
Don't you hate when they make you sympathize with the villain?
Not to sympathize with her, but when you
empathize, whatever.
When you see what she's gone through and stuff, and you take it all in, and you see things from the viewpoint of how a woman in a time like that might have been treated, you can understand where, when she does grasp for control in sometimes overly violent ways. It's not, she doesn't do good things, but you can understand where her anger and her fury comes from. I have to say I respect it. In one way, she is doing what people wish that they could do, but they don't have the cojones that she does at this point, and nor the backing or anything else. Yeah, it helps that she's from the richest house in the 7 Kingdoms.
I also got to say though, she also understands. She's not as vicious and ferocious as other characters. For example, Joffrey. It wasn't until,
at least not yet.
No, but it wasn't until this showing or this viewing of mine that the episode's Baelor when Ned gets beheaded.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the deal that made that Ned would receive mercy and just take the black at the Night's Watch. But when he says no, but Sir Aelin Payne will cut off his head or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
Cersei is visually and visibly right next to Sansa pleading to Joffrey, do not do this. This is a bad idea. Because Cersei understands the importance
of a political prisoner. Yeah.
Exactly. And everything. So I got to admit, maybe she's not entirely terrible.
Cersei falls. She descends into her evil ways a lot more as the series goes on, but at this point in the series there is definitely a human there, and a
mother, and she loves her children,
right? Yes, she is a frighteningly relatable person.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the mark of an excellent character. One other scene I want to talk about, I realize we are underselling how many scenes. We could do an entire podcast, like series of podcasts that are just on the dialogue in this, but I just want to touch on You Win or You Die, the first scene, Tywin Lannister talking with Jaime as he is butchering a stag.
This is his introduction, and gotta say, the symbolism,
excellent. Yep, a Lannister cutting apart a stag, the sigil of House Baratheon.
Another thing, I don't know if you read in my production note of this, is that was a real stag. Number one, Charles Dance didn't have any training in terms of butchering, and so he trained 1 hour before filming in terms of how to carve the stag, and that was it.
The man's a professional. He's just he is.
He got those intestines right out of there.
Anytime, like, he is one of my favorite characters in the show because he's
also a great performer.
He is such a commanding, like presence. Everything about him is in his delivery of his lines and his posture in scenes, in the dialogue he is given. Like,
instantly in that scene, which is about 5 minutes long, you immediately get his motivations. The disappointed and fragile relationship that he has with all of his children, but with just Jaime, and kind of his stance on like the overall themes of the show and how he kind of shits on honor in a way. He says that like power, fear, and family are mean way more than glory or honor or whatever the hell.
And again, like, credit to George's writing when he is such a fantastic character, and everything about his character is tied to his backstory in how he viewed his father and how he disagreed with some of his father's choices, and getting to learn all of that. I don't know how much it's covered in the show, but because Tytos Lannister was kind of a not very impressive dude.
No, we get some sort of insight. I want to say in season 2 we do when Arya is at Harrenhal and we get that exploration and
right,
and so we get some insight. But I think it's enough in terms of just like viewing as an television audience member. It was enough insight, and like I feel like those scenes still had the same amount of emotional depth that really anything else would have maybe been a little more overkill.
Yeah. Now, Charles Dance, wonderful actor. Anytime I see him and stuff, I'm like, I'm in for a treat. But
he was just in, I guess not just in, but he was in Godzilla King of Monsters.
Yeah,
he played Lord Mountbatten in the later seasons of The Crown.
Yeah, they put him in a lot of stuff where it's like, I can tell they watched Game of Thrones. They're like, we need him. Like, he was in that, he was in the Dark Universe, cinematic universe they were going for with, like, The Mummy and all of that.
Oh, which one was he in?
He was in The Mummy. I think he's at the very end, and he goes,
I didn't.
He goes, let the games begin, and
I didn't even watch the new Mummy.
It's bad, but yeah, everyone wants him to be Tywin Lannister and everything, and I don't blame them because it's an awesome role. A couple of other things I wanted to cover as we're kind of, trotting along with this series. There's a big aspect of this show that I think bears a little bit of talking about, not crazy amount, but something that I feel is worth. It was a big factor in what made this show so popular from the beginning. It's a big, wet, smelly, engorged thing, a throbbing thing. It's sex. This is God, Westeros must just stink because there is so much fucking going on. Everyone in this show fucks like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think this was also at the time that HBO still served softcore pornography on their streaming
But
list.
man,
they only just took it off. What, a year, 2 years ago?
I don't know.
Yeah, look it up, Google it. I remember because I was like,
because you watched it.
No, I was on the app and it said, what did it say? What was the category?
Kids, cover your ears.
It was like
you were up late one night.
I was trying to find Game of Thrones and it said like, shows for adults. I was like, oh, this is probably it. And then I click on it, I'm like, what is this? I had no idea. No idea. It was kind of funny you have things like that.
In these shows, you get it a lot in premium channel shows that are, they cater to a more mature audience. Sex, it's a normal part of life. Birds and the bees.
Yeah, HBO's when
a mommy and daddy love each other very much.
They're not a newcomer to this game. They know what they're doing.
I feel like, especially in season 1, you don't get it so much. As the series went on, they pulled it back way. Like the stuff by the end of the series is nowhere near as intense as the stuff in the first 3-4 seasons. And I think, they used sex to smooth over a lot of the info dumps. I think the most obvious example is when Littlefinger is explaining his whole backstory with Catelyn and Brandon Stark, Ned's older brother, who is dead before the beginning of the series. That and as he's explaining this whole thing, you have the two whores just going at it in full force. It's kind of an awkward scene because you're just like, am I supposed to listen to you, buddy? But at this point, looking back on it, when I've been doing my rewatch, it's more funny than anything else.
I'll tell you what, though, I think this show does a really interesting job, though, not just including, the regular woman and man, but kind of exploring all forms of sex.
Oh yeah,
and it's super inclusive, and I'm like,
opportunity.
Wow, exactly. And
Except
I'm like,
it does frame a lot of the stuff as we get into the later seasons. There's groups of religious people in the series that don't like certain groups. Not saying that the show, speaks down to anyone.
No, but I mean,
that.
I'm sure that there's inspired by real world
absolutely.
issues.
But
which, you shouldn't ignore. But actually, what's her name? Who was it that? It was Olenna Tyrell, right? In a later season, is having a conversation.
You mean
with
one of the
Tywin
best
Lannister.
If the series?
If not the best character in the entire series. She's talking to Tywin, and it said oh yeah, if men lay with men, that's acceptable in Highgarden, but brother and sister, that's a stain you can't wash on your family. And I'm like, oh boy, that is a really good comeback. So there are some really accepting areas in Westeros, and Essos. I mean, it's everywhere. Everybody.
Yeah, there's a lot of sexual taboos shown. SNL had a really funny sketch back in the day where Andy Samberg as the sex advisor for the show, and he's a 13-year-old boy, and he's like, in this scene you're gonna have a guy having sex with a girl.
Know that. I have not seen this.
It shows a guy looking through the keyhole and he's getting blown, and then
I did not know this.
But yeah, I mean, again, the term sexposition was created by Miles McNutt, funny name, for these kinds of scenes where you just have characters in the middle of some intense coitus, and while they're delivering backstories or character motivations, and it's, again, I think, they needed that extra little something to make all the info dumping go down smooth with their audience, and make sure their audience didn't change the channel while Littlefinger is regaling us with stories of getting cut from navel to collarbone.
Yeah. So really great contrast right there.
Also, the show's got it's drawn a lot of criticism for sexual violence. I think, it's a part of the world. It makes the world feel more real. But there's an interesting thing that it does. Drogo and Dany's first night together in the show is played out as a rape. And I always found that weird because in the book it is unquestionably consensual. Yeah. And I was always confused why they made that decision to turn it into... I guess you could say it's to make Daenerys have a more dynamic character shift.
I mean, yeah, if you think about it, like they said she was, 14 at that point in the show, right? And she had never been with anybody. And, so you talk about, one, how vulnerable she was in that kind of situation. And, I mean, kind of painted her in a certain light. Though, it's like the episode right after that, they try to,
yeah, they try to make her more assertive and stuff, but
exactly.
But yeah, so other than that, the only other thing I have is a funny story of I was watching the show, I was introducing the show to our mutual friend Jared, and
he still hasn't watched this?
No, he has. This was years ago.
Okay, thank God.
I was introducing him to the show we were watching. It's like one of the first few episodes of season 2, and but there's a scene. No, it's in season 1. Excuse me. It's when Theon is with Roz, who is a television show original character, and they're going at it, and then he steps away, and his his dick's just hanging out, and they literally have just finished the act, and Jared just points to it and goes, "How come his dick's soft?" And I go, "Why would you ask that?" And I said, "But you're right." and ever since...
Asking the hard-hitting questions here, Jared.
Exactly. And then later, I believe that same observation was made by South Park. So kudos to Jared. You said it first.
I wonder, you think about it, this is because Game of Thrones is known for, putting body doubles in for some of their
right.
performers, and CGing some bodies as well.
Mm-hmm.
There is a practice in the industry where they'll give men fake penises to wear, so it's not the real penis.
They did it to Christian Nairn, who plays Hodor, in his scene where he's running around with his junk out. That's a prosthetic.
Okay, that's not his real one. That's good to know. Who was it? It was Jason Schwartzman in one of these movies that he was in had to wear a fake penis. And there's a funny photo of him online that you can see of behind the scenes, him at the craft services with it out or something like that. It's pretty interesting. I want to go back to a point you mentioned about kind of the violence in the show, especially violence between against women. There's actually a scene with it's the one where Cersei and Robert are seeing Ned in the bed.
Yeah,
and it's there's a quip of dialogue there that's oh man,
he cracks her across the face.
Yeah, and she looks at him and says, "I will wear this like a badge of honor." And then Robert immediately looks back at her you best
wear it in silence, quiet, or I'll honor you again.
Oh my God! Oh God, that's some
cold
devastating.
Shit to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I gotta say, she, she's tough. She's a tough woman.
Man, if Cersei didn't get much worse, in the things that she does as the series went on, she really wouldn't be that bad of a character. But unfortunately, she gives into her darker impulses.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though. I think they do a good job, though, of trying to balance out some of the shit that we see in Westeros with Daenerys's
shenanigans.
No, I wouldn't call them shenanigans. All her arc in all of her Essos story is trying to do better by people that she needs to follow her, and so she wants to set a clear example of the expectation of what men and women should be. And I guess we get more of that as the seasons go on, rather than this first one. But I think it's a big part. And then as we're getting into talking about her right now,
it's time for my new segment I'm bringing to the show. I'm calling it Daenerys Red Flags.
Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah. Hey.
I do want to start and say though that like though that's like a really great aspect about her character, and yeah, she's doing some really great things for a lot of people. But you got to think about how she's doing it for a lot of the other people.
So yes,
so Zach, please. This is now your new segment in our show.
You're 100% right, Chris. When you say she's a good person, kind of, and she tries to set a good example, but man. We're okay, skipping ahead to season 8, I believe anyone would agree she kind of goes off the deep end in the last couple of episodes. I would say I was surprised, not at her actions, but at people's reactions, because you would think by some people's claim that this change of hers, this snap, that sees her
like
burning
like
people alive in their homes and massacring an entire city, that oh man, that came out of nowhere. There was no build up to that. It makes no sense with her established character, and how could they write her like this? I'm here to tell you, Daenerys Targaryen, first of her name, Stormborn, the Unburnt, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Seas, Breaker of Chains, and Mother of Dragons, has always been crazy.
She didn't earn all them titles from, shaking hands and giving people flowers, I'll tell you that much.
Exactly. And from now until our last coverage of Game of Thrones, I will be compiling every goddamn red flag that this crazy Targaryen girl throws up, because, man... there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you could count how many times she says "with fire and blood" in the entire series. Please.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, those are her house words, but
no, using them in the context of which she uses them. I don't think she's referencing her house, but rather her vengeful intent.
No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that's the point of those words, but that's getting beyond season 1. We're going to focus today just on season 1's red flags, and there's only a few, because, season 1, she's very demure at the start, and then she learns to kind of be a stronger person. But I think our first major red flag, because up until this point, anytime she's asserted herself, it's been against Viserys, who is an abusive man and deserved every horrible thing that happened to him.
Oh, I loved it. I loved what happened to him.
So when Viserys gets his golden crown from Drogo, Dany refuses to look away. Jorah tries to get her to look away, and she refuses. And she stands there and watches her only living kin killed as he has molten gold poured over his skull in an extremely brutal fashion. She doesn't blink even once.
Her eyes just say it all. She I mean, after the knowledge that she had earlier in that episode and in that day that she learns that she's likely the true dragon and she is unburnt and everything, I think at that point she's just like, fuck this guy.
Yeah. And yes, Viserys was a fucking piece of shit. And it's easy to cheer this one on. And I think that becomes a common thing of like, she projects her craziness to the correct targets for us to be like, hey, yeah, good job, Dany. But then in looking at it objectively, she watches her own brother get killed, and she listens to him shrieking in pain, and she just stonewalls it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she was wrong, but it's definitely a red flag of like, okay, there is at the very least, like, that
would be traumatic for anybody.
There's a lack of empathy there that right now is understandable, because again, Viserys was a rotten piece of shit. But it's still a red flag. The next one I noted, and if you think of any others, please mention, cut in. And everyone listening, if you know of any red flags that I don't mention, please comment them, because I want to know every single one.
I mean, the thing is, I've been trying to keep track of them because at this point in my rewatch, I'm on season 4 right now.
Okay.
I went, a little outside of the homework assignment.
Oh, that's okay.
And so I have a bunch that one that you just mentioned was the big one that I'm like, dude, this is like, you don't need anything else. But it's in her dialogue, her dialogue and her actions do not match each other. And, when people look at what she's doing, it's kind of like what you said, like, yeah, her targets they kind of deserve it. But at the same time, what she's saying should have come, to anybody's mind thinking like, oh, she could be crazy.
No, she's absolutely crazy. Speaking of which, let's look at later in the series, a little later
series
in the season.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay.
When she is almost poisoned by a wine merchant, who I believe sent by Robert Baratheon to poison her, and he's caught by Jorah, and he is brought back to Vaes Dothrak, and he is confronted by Drogo, and Drogo has this awesome scene where he declares his intention to cross the Narrow Sea, and he's gonna tear down their stone houses and their flying horses or whatever, and
he's gonna claim the Iron Chair.
And he Iron Chair, and he's going to kill all the men and rape all the women, and it's this kind of crazy scene, which, if you live in a world where slavery is a big no-no, like most of us do, you go like, hey, yes, I understand your anger, Drogo, Mr. Drogo, but you're talking about some very horrible things right now. But man, Dany's face in that scene, she has never been more in love with Drogo than this moment when he is talking about enslaving, murdering, and raping.
It's also a cultural difference, Zach. You got to think, the Dothraki, that is the root of their culture. So maybe we're just misunderstanding it. But no. At the same time, no, yes, those are some fucking terrible things.
Yeah, so
and I agree.
Fact that she is like so enamored with him in this moment, I realize that part of her being enamored is just that he is going to such extremes and he is agreeing to do the things she wanted him to do.
Do you feel like she has a case of like what is it called? Stockholm syndrome?
No, because I think she, once she learns to assert herself and show Drogo that she's not going to take it lying down, literally, I think he gains respect for her, and she in turn sees a side of him that wasn't apparent. So I don't think it's Stockholm, because she has an active role in the relationship. But yeah, anyway, so Drogo, crazy man, wants to rape and kill, and she's all for it. So red flag. Last but not least, we're talking Mirri Maz Duur. First of all, Daenerys, burns her in a funeral pyre, listens to her screaming as she dies.
Oh, she's like, I will not scream, like, yes, you will.
Yeah.
That was actually a really nice moment.
And Dany, in this moment, she believes it's justified because Mirri Maz Duur ensured that Drogo got an infection from his boo-boo, and then she sacrificed Rhaego to give Drogo quote-unquote life, which was just him in a vegetative state. Which leads to Dany having to mercy kill Drogo. And that's all well and good until you look at the whole thing from Mirri Maz Duur's perspective. Mirri Maz Duur is not a bad person. She was a goat farmer, a lamb farmer, and a healer of her tribe. And then Drogo's Khalasar comes in and just
pillages,
destroys, murders, enslaves, rapes. And you even hear Mirri Maz Duur say, you saved me from what? By the time you got to me, I had already been raped like 4 times that day.
Yeah.
And, what have you given me? And when Danny says, "I've given you life," and she says, "Well, look at your call. Look at what good life is when nothing else remains." And it's a big hit for Danny, and I think
the words are cutting.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those early lessons for Danny about her actions and the consequences and stuff. But again, it's, would a good person have then taken Mary Mazdur and strapped her to a funeral pyre and set her on fire? I don't know. I feel like if Danny was a true caring person who had the best intentions for everybody and was not a crazy person, she probably would have said, "You know what? You're right. We fucked up."
Instead, she turned out to be a true Karen.
She says, "I'd like to speak to your manager, and by that, I mean you're on fire."
I'll tell you what, though, you gotta admit, that's like the season finale, dude. That was like the coolest fucking shit.
I agree, but also I
mean, yeah, we have the knowledge that, yeah, we should know better than to say, like, yeah, that's all great and well and good, but
I was gonna say the only thing I don't like about it is that I never liked that television Danny is fireproof, because she's 100% not fireproof in the books. And that is, in the books, kind of seen as a miracle moment. Like, I mean, all the magics were aligned in just the way that she survived in that moment. Whereas
she's definitely not knife proof.
That's true. But spoilers. But yeah, and then listen, I'm not excusing Danny's actions at all, because she's crazy, and anyone who thinks she's not crazy is crazy. But listen, if I was in her position and everyone was saying, "Hey, you're wrong, you're crazy," and then I walked into a fire with 3 dragon eggs, which would probably in most people's expectation would be suicide. And not only did I live, but I was gifted 3 nuclear bombs for my effort. I would probably have a high opinion of myself. And so I can understand where Daenerys comes from when she's, "Hey, I'm a big fucking deal." But it doesn't change the fact that she's insane.
No, yeah, I would agree. Like, we definitely got enough, bad seeds in this planter.
Murder garden.
Yeah, for sure. And continually so. Like, this was just the starting point, because it gets much, much worse. Granted, we love the moments that they come in, because we think it's well deserved. It's vigilante justice is what she's conditioning out, to be honest with you.
Kind of.
But and at the same time, like, what's the motivation behind it? It's not. Is it a truly just thing? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. In a world where entitlement is everything to these fucking people.
Yeah.
In the real world, that shit shouldn't fly.
Chris, it's simple arithmetic. If you start Danny and Miri Mazdur at both a net 0, Danny gets a minus point for being complicit in the destruction, rape, and enslavement of her people. Then Miri Mazdur gets a negative for she gets a positive, I should say, for killing, ensuring that Khal Drogo died as retribution. Yeah. And then Danny should have gotten a +1 back to net 0 by going, "You know what? You're right. Leave
who's standing to go to these people and tell them to what they need, or
right?
How to save them.
I was entitled, and I should have checked my privilege, and you're right. You are justified in your actions, and I won't take any retribution against you." Except Danny goes, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
And so Danny, I think she kind of steps away from this season with a little bit of blood on her hands, and
lots of ash and fire.
Hey, but you know what? I would be lying if I said that the ending of this season does not give me chills every time I watch it.
I gotta tell you what, it might be one of the best endings of any first season television show that I've seen.
Yeah, I made a long list of like all these noteworthy scenes, and I don't think we have the time to go through them, but I just want to talk about that ending because you get the funeral pyre, it fades to black, and then it, comes up as Jorah is like, it's the morning and Jorah's walking through, like, it looks like a fucking like Burning Man festival as he's like walking through all the sleeping Dothraki.
Yeah.
And you see Daenerys there, and she comes out of the smoke and she's got her dragons. And I love this scene so much. The way the dragons are revealed, the way that they're placed on her in very symbolic meaning. Ian Glenn's acting in that moment, as I truly believe when I see his reaction, I am seeing a person who is witnessing
pure disbelief.
Witnessing a miracle happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he bends and he's like, blood of my blood, and then the music swells as Drogon stands on Daenerys' shoulder and he stretches his wings out and he begins to screech, and as the music hits that crescendo, he lets out one final just loud screech and it cuts to black. Ugh.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Well, it will rhyme next season because I think they do have a George Lucas moment at the end of season 2.
That is true. Man, what a great show. I'm so happy I'm rewatching and everything. I really have missed this show and the excitement that it brought.
It's so good. I can't say enough. I could probably do another like 3 hours just talking about every minute detail about this story, but I think it's
lucky for you, Zach. This won't be our last episode on Game of Thrones.
No, it won't. And I would always, if we get through 8 seasons and our audience wants us to go back and discuss season 1 more in depth, or like, whatever form that takes, I'm down, because this is a show I can talk for days about.
Oh my God. And with that being said, please feel free to send us all your questions, comments, and concerns regarding Game of Thrones, anything, and our opinions and fan mail to one of our social media pages. That's at Scripter Screen on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also find us on our website, www.scripterscreen.com or anchor.fm/scripterscreen. Zach, I want to thank you for a wonderful conversation on this show, dude. And then, season 2, it's all Tyrion all day, baby.
Oh my God, his best season.
I know. So, that being said, my name is Christopher of House Kitchen.
And I am Zach of House Strackman.
We will see you next time on Scripter Screen. And remember, winter is coming.
Bye.